Darkcast Network. Indie pods with a dark side.
Hi, I'm Ashley, a true crime fanatic.
I'm Dan, and I don't know anything about true crime.
Together, we host Fuck That, a true crime podcast that covers cases that highlight important topics that are often overlooked, such as wrongful convictions, domestic violence, and social inequities, sprinkled in with the occasional case with spooky themes. If you are looking for your next true crime fix delivered candidly with a hint of sarcasm, you can listen and subscribe to bi-weekly episodes of Fuck That wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to give us a follow on Facebook and Twitter at @FThatPod and at @FThat_pod on Instagram.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot.
Hey, y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders.
Hey, I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, Dylan.
Hey.
You look frosty.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that this is the Meat Locker edition of Mountain Murders. Oh, shit.
If only we were posting video with our episodes.
Oh, no, we look so ridiculous right now.
I'm basically wearing like 3 blankets as we record.
I have one of Heather's sweater shawls thrown across my shoulders. And you know what?
It looks really good on you, actually.
I'm not regretting it.
You
I'm
wear
not.
it. You wear it quite well.
Oh, yeah. So we're freezing here in Western North Carolina. We hope everyone's at least warm and safe. And why not happy and fed as well? So Heather, you have some very good shout outs for us.
I just wondered how many times you could say in under 30 seconds.
I haven't been a lot. I thought I would this episode.
Thanks. It's
Yeah.
Quality audio, Dylan. Well, let's give a shout out to today's sponsors, Jennifer and Maria. They have so generously donated at patreon.com. They have subscribed over there, supporting the show, but they're also accessing bonus content, ad-free episodes, a link to our Discord chat. Yeah. Dylan, we started a brand new Patreon series on haunted castles.
We did.
I think a lot of folks are excited about that. Just one more reason why you should support Mountain Murders on patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast.
It's true. Thank you, Jennifer and Maria.
Okay, enough of that. Dylan, we have an interesting case to discuss today.
We do.
We do. And I want to preface it by saying one of the main reasons I chose this case was due to the lack of attention it seemed to receive at the time. It's a horrific crime, but for some reason the media didn't find it as newsworthy as other stories.
So you're saying they had a less ability to exploit this story for viewership?
No one should die this way, and it's a truly sad case. There are a few other elements to the story that I find disturbing as well.
Okay. Well, let's. I think we should just dive straight in.
I think we should too, Dylan. Let's heat things up here with a mountain murder case.
Oh, my God.
Melissa McLauchlin was born to parents Patricia and Claire in Ionia, Michigan. She grew up in Wixom with a brother and sister. Now, I don't know much about Melissa's life growing up. I can't find a lot of information out there about her childhood, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. Her mother, Patricia, described Melissa, also known as Missy, as a trusting person. She was described as being friendly, easygoing, and enjoyed the outdoors. Missy was a good student growing up and attended Sunday school regularly, where she was considered like a model Sunday school student.
Oh, wow. That's got to be a report every parent likes to get back. Your child's the best behaved in Sunday school.
You know what? The only reason I enjoyed Sunday school was because we got snacks. Can I be honest about that? And I had the best Sunday school teacher. She was also my kindergarten teacher. Her name was Mrs. Early. And everybody that grew up here in this county that had Mrs. Early as a teacher loved her. She was just like the sweetest, most grandmotherly
Oh.
lady. And she was my Sunday school teacher. And I always looked forward to seeing Mrs. Early. And she had taught like generations. Like my dad had her. I think my Nana had her.
So
So she was just precious.
a county institution.
Yeah, just the sweetest lady. So I feel lucky that I was in Mrs. Early's Sunday school class.
So you were letting Oreos into your heart down there in the basement of the church.
Yeah, actually, we were in an upstairs room.
Oh, okay.
Okay. 25-year-old Missy had struggled with substance abuse issues. Reportedly, she liked the cocaine.
Ah, yes, the cacao.
In the mid-'80s or so, which I think was a time when maybe a lot of people were experimenting with the cocaine.
I think there was more than one person that liked cocaine back then.
You had kind of graduated out of that disco era, but like 80s, when I think of the 80s and Excess and Wall Street and like Patrick Bateman types and all that, it seems like cocaine was kind of a big party drug back then.
Certainly.
In 1992, but she did attend a rehab program and got clean. So in 1992, Missy was engaged to her boyfriend, John Owen. Owen said he met Melissa in Florida in 1989, where she had been living at the time. She was no longer using drugs, cocaine, anything like that. And the couple had been together several years, according to reports. To save money in order to get married and purchase a home, the couple had moved to Charleston, South Carolina, where they lived with Owen's mother in the North Charleston area. And from what I gather at the time, that may not have been like the best area. I think there was kind of a lot of crime, just not a safe place.
No, and every city, every town has these places.
Missy's mother said after high school, she kind of just worked and hung out with friends. She decided not to go to college. And it sounds like she just kind of worked, like minimum wage type of jobs. She spent the summer of 1991 in Wixom with her parents working at McDonald's. So at the time, Missy talked of saving money for a home and the couple's upcoming wedding. When she did go out, it was usually to sing karaoke with friends.
The good old Okies.
A detail I thought I would add since you're such an avid karaoke performer.
I'm not an avid karaoke performer.
You're not?
No.
You go every week.
Well, I just go to have fun and see my
sing
friends.
like 3 or 4 songs and then like take the mic from other people.
That's a damn lie. That was one time I was toasted.
Is it, Dylan?
I think so.
Whatever. Everybody knows Dylan, the life of the party. The karaoke party.
It's not.
The sad middle-aged karaoke party that we attend with like our 4 friends every week.
I'm going to be Madonna. I'm never letting go. Just get me a bar, prop me up on stage, son. I'm going to keep rocking.
Nice. On December 29th of 1992, Melissa was out with her fiance, John Owen, at a nightclub called Willie's. Intoxicated, Missy and Owen started arguing over a perceived slight. Missy thought he was looking at another woman, possibly flirting.
Oh, so she thinks she caught him ogling.
Ogling. Yes.
Ogling.
Yeah.
Another woman.
I've never caught you ogling another woman.
You haven't.
That's a damn lie.
No, that's true, because I don't.
No, you'll always deny it and be like, what woman?
Well, that's because I didn't see her.
No, that's because you were probably too busy looking at her boobs or something.
That's not true.
Now you're pretty respectful.
See, now we're getting into an argument over a perceived slight. See how this is just a vicious cycle.
I don't care. You can look at other women, Dylan.
I don't want to. I want to look at my wife.
I look at other men.
I know you show me. You'll be like, look at this guy.
Well, it's usually just a guy on like Instagram or something.
Yeah, just an Instagram model guy.
But I don't ever look at like local men. Oh. They don't do it for me.
That's because they're gross.
That's because you do it for me, baby.
Oh, in person, I do it for you.
You do it for me.
But on the gram, it's some big dude who dresses like he's from the 1930s.
Well, yeah, but he's like 23, so it's
okay.
I'm like old enough to be his mother.
Let's just move on with the story while we're still married.
We're a cougar. Angry, Missy stormed out of the club and began walking home. Police spotted Missy, and I read some conflicting reports. One interview with an officer said they spotted Missy walking, and there were 2 men in a car who seemed to be trying to maybe get her to get in the car, and they were concerned for her safety.
Okay.
So the officers pull up and say, hey, we'll give you a ride home. Like, let's get you home safely. Other reports are just that the officers saw her and offered her a ride.
So either way, the cops made contact with her.
Yes.
And they told her they'll take her home.
Yeah, they were worried about her walking home alone at night. And again, it sounds like maybe this wasn't the best neighborhood.
No, but see, this is more like the old school idea of kind of community policing. Instead of just hiding around the corner waiting to pounce on a citizen for any small infraction, they're actually looking out for her well-being, and they're going out of their way to make sure she's safe. And I think that's what policing should look like.
I agree. So the officers gave Missy a ride home. When she landed at the house she shared with Owen and his mother, Missy realized she left the house key behind at the bar. She knocked on the door. Owen's mother, Mary Singleton, was asleep in the house at the time. And by the time she woke up, Missy had already made her way around to the back of the house. Missing each other by just a few seconds, Missy took off walking again along Rivers Avenue, possibly to a nearby Piggly Wiggly grocery store where she was employed at the time. Singleton tried to call out for McLauchlin from the front porch, but thinks the sound of traffic drowned out her voice.
So she barely misses her, and by the time she puts eyes on her, Missy's walking away.
Yes. Singleton will later say she felt incredible guilt for not making more effort to get Missy's attention.
And I could understand that.
But you can't really blame yourself.
Well, and you don't
because
realize.
There's traffic.
Right.
Right.
And you're half asleep, and you don't exactly know what's going on for a minute. And you don't realize that something terrible may happen. So, I mean, it's not her fault.
Missy and John had plans to move into their own place in 2 weeks. So they were very close to moving out of his mother's house. They'd saved their money, planning a wedding, going to purchase a home. I mean, it sounds like they were really trying to start their life as a couple.
Yeah.
With stability.
Yeah, you build a good base, a good foundation. You own a home, buy a home together at a young age is a very admirable move, in my opinion. I mean, I think to do that.
How nice to have a relative, a family member that says, hey, move in here, save some money so that you can buy a house, right?
They say that exists, but I've never seen it myself.
Yeah, me either. Must be nice to have a loving family.
Oh.
3 men, Matthew Mack, Matthew Williams, and Joseph Gardner, had seen Missy walking as they were driving. There is some argument about how Missy came to accept a ride from the 3 men. Now, of course, they have their own version of the story. And I think as we go on, you're going to probably discount what they have to say.
I don't know. We didn't do a trigger warning, but this is a horrific, brutal crime. So,
yeah, we probably should give a trigger warning.
Kind of.
We do discuss sexual assault, and it's a pretty gruesome account. So if that's not your thing, we ain't going to be mad at you if you skip.
We'll see you next week.
So it has been said that the men forced Missy into the car at gunpoint, while the men claimed all they did was offer her drugs, specifically crack cocaine.
Okay. Well, no, I'm not supporting either version, but I'm just sussing it out. She's been known to do the cocaines. So it's certainly something that may catch her attention. Now she's in recovery. It sounds like I'm doing a lot better as far as the cocaine goes. But so that's possible in my mind. But
I have a hard time believing that she agreed to go with these 3 strange men who are just randomly offering her some crack cocaine.
No,
because it sounds, and this is just based on my research, interviews with her fiance and her family, is that she maybe partied with drugs back in the day, but I don't think she was like a full-blown addict.
Right, she didn't lose everything she had and didn't bounce off the bottom and all that.
Right, and it sounds like she had not, it had been like some years.
Right. So in that perspective, in that lens, I would doubt that she got into a car with 3 strange men.
Well, regardless, the men took Missy back to a mobile home that was rented by Matthew Williams, and it was located on Stall Road. I should also mention the 3 men are African American, while Missy is a Caucasian woman, and that's going to play a role in our story as we progress. And from what I gathered, Dylan, this mobile home park, there were a lot of active duty military who resided in this trailer park.
Oh, okay.
Including several of our key players in the story. There is the Charleston Naval Base nearby, and a lot of the neighbors and residents of the park were also service members.
Or connected.
Sailors, or they, were like had been in the military and were out now. The three men had spent most of the day drinking and watching interracial pornographic videos with their girlfriends.
Okay.
Hey, everybody's got their porn category.
Everybody's got their porn category, but I've said this before. I've never sat in a room full of people and watched porn, males or females. Never. Because I find it uncomfortable.
Well, it's weird. I think the only time I've ever watched a porno with a group of people was when the Pamela and Tommy Lee porn came out.
Right.
I was in college, and I was an RA, and I remember walking by a room, and they were like, dude, we got the Pamela and Tommy porn. And I remember stepping in like, so that's what the fuss is about. And then immediately left.
Yes.
Yes. Old Tommy Lee.
Oh, Tom. Well, and Pamela was there. So, I mean, there was a lot of fuss for everybody on that.
Well, there was. But, there was all this talk about Tommy Lee's
third leg.
Big drumstick.
Yes.
Okay.
He had a big old drumstick.
He sure did. So, they had spent their day watching porn. Again, kind of weird. At one point, Matthew Mack got into an argument with his white girlfriend and shouted that he wanted to stab her, but that, quote, any white woman would do.
Okay, those are disturbing statements.
Williams chimed in saying he wanted to, quote, fuck a white woman.
Well, I mean, you can want one hand and wish in the other one, right, buddy? See which one fills up first.
Okay. Well, you know what, sir? I would like to win $10 million. We all have our hopes and dreams. Later in the day, the group watched a television news report on one of the biggest news stories of 1992, Dylan, the Rodney King case.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that went down during this period.
Now, just as a refresher, we grew up, we remember this. I remember this being on TV. I found it I was a kid, and this is one of the first news reports that I'd ever seen that was super graphic.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's one of the very first times that video came into play in a situation like that, and you had the visual evidence of what was happening, and I think that really hit a lot of people.
It did.
Instead of hearing a written account or somebody describing it, you see there's no doubt about what's happening. It's very obvious that
it left a mark on me
yes,
as a young person.
I
I
agree.
think I was 11 or 12. I was a preteen when this story hit, and I just remember, being a small town girl, sheltered, naive, and watching this video, and it was very disturbing and heartbreaking for me. And I remember my parents being outraged about what had happened, and explaining to me, I guess more in a more adult way about racism and the LAPD's history. But I do remember this just being very, very disturbing. It caused a lot. It incited a lot of feelings.
It was outrageous.
Strong emotions. Yes.
And you could even take someone who may not be the most open-minded person in the world.
People were horrified by
this.
But
I didn't know anyone who was like, yeah, the cops, go cops. Everyone was just blown away by it and the obvious police brutality they were seeing with their own eyes.
Right. So as a refresher, if you're not familiar with the Rodney King case, on March 3rd of 1991, he was severely beaten by officers of the Los Angeles Police Department, also known as the LAPD, during his arrest after a high-speed pursuit for driving while intoxicated on I-210. An uninvolved resident named George Holliday saw and filmed the incident from his nearby balcony and then sent the footage which showed the unarmed King on the ground being beaten after evading arrest. No. He sent it to the local news station KTLA, and the incident was covered by news media around the world and caused a major public uproar.
Now, we also must point out this is back in the day when everyone doesn't have a smartphone with a camera in their pocket.
Right.
So this guy just happened to have a VHS recorder, which is a big I'm sure you've seen them in the Goodwills.
Oh, I remember those things.
Big, cumbersome. I mean, this is basically like what they're carrying around like for news crews.
And they were like so expensive.
And they were super expensive.
Now you can get those little digital video cameras for
$60,
anything.
$80.
But at the time, I remember they were really expensive. It was like we called it a rich people item, Dylan.
It was just much like VCRs when they first came out. They were costing $800,000. So the happenstance, there's the coincidence of this man having access to a VHS recorder or a camcorder, whatever you want to call it, and just happened to be there. This was all very odd, and it's just it's like it was meant to be for this to get out for people to see what happened to Rodney.
Well, after watching this news report, Joseph Gardner said that African Americans had endured 400 years of oppression. He made a New Year's resolution to, quote, kill a white bitch.
Okay.
Later that night, the three men went out for a drive and picked up Missy. When they brought Missy back to the trailer where Williams lived along with these other men who were his roommates, they each took turns raping her at gunpoint.
See, now this makes hearing the mindset that these guys were in basically all day. It almost makes for certain that Missy didn't willingly go with them. They saw her, they saw an opportunity, they jumped out and grabbed her. I mean, I'm gonna lean towards that.
During this time, Edna Lee Jenkins and Indira Simmons, the girlfriends of Matthew Mack and Matthew Williams, were in the trailer's living room watching television. And actually, I'm sorry, I said Matthew Williams. That was Joseph Gardner's girlfriend, Edna Jenkins. So I'm sorry, I messed that up. They did nothing to help Missy.
So 2 of the 3 guys' girlfriends are in the living room watching TV, smoking cigarettes or some shit.
Yeah.
While they're brutalizing a woman in the back room.
Yes. Which I have a really hard time wrapping my mind around that.
I have a hard time wrapping my mind around the fact that, which I know there's birds of a feather and all, but the fact that even if one of these guys wanted to do this, the other 2 guys are just going along with it. Like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, let's do it. I don't know. I would be aghast. I would never, ever partake in something like this.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's pretty terrible, Dylan. So meanwhile, the men called a few friends who lived in the trailer park, letting them know that they had, quote, captured a white woman. So just using that turn of phrase, captured, lets me know that I really don't think Missy willingly went along with this.
You went out hunting and you've captured a victim.
3 more men, sailors stationed at the Charleston Naval Base, along with Joseph Gardner, who was an active duty sailor at the time, arrived, and they took turns raping Missy.
So you knew a whole nother group of guys who had no problem with coming and raping somebody with you.
Well, Dylan, we were discussing before we started to record about the psychology behind a gang rape, and you were saying that's something that if a group of men were like, hey, we're going to go do this, that you would say, no, I'm not going to go do that.
Well, I not only wouldn't say no, I would do what I could to stop it. Be it intervene directly myself or call police and just tell on everybody, tell the teacher. I couldn't live with myself. I don't know. It blows my mind that.
Well, there's some interesting psychology behind it, Dylan. The University of Birmingham in the United Kingdom published a study about following the leader. They say that that is a mentality that is a hallmark of gang rape. When there's violent rapes by multiple perpetrators, they're most frequently carried out when the group decides to sort of follow the leader of the group.
Well, you usually have someone who is the catalyst, someone who's either setting it up or starting the situation.
Some of the motives for serial gang rapes or gang rapes in general are sexual entitlement, asserting sexual prowess, punishment, and in up to 30% of cases, they're targeting racial minorities, religious minorities, or certain ethnic groups.
So though Missy is white and not a minority, this is certainly seems to be racially motivated. I don't know how you could not think that, right?
We're going to get into that, Dylan. That's going to be a pretty big part of our story. So Gardner tried to sodomize Missy, and that is when she really began fighting back, which angered him. The men forced Missy into the shower where they doused her skin in bleach and hydrogen peroxide. Using a nylon brush, they scrubbed her skin and genitals, believing they were washing away any evidence linking them to the rapes. And this reminded me of the Channon Christensen, Christopher Newsom case out of Knoxville.
Yeah.
Because that group also did the same thing to that poor young woman.
Jesus.
And just the thought of they're putting these very strong cleaning chemicals in an internal cavity that's not supposed to have those. That's after that she's been raped.
And scrubbing her probably forcefully makes my skin crawl.
Yeah. So during this time, the men openly began discussing killing Missy. She had to be terrified.
How could she not be? She's been brutalized by multiple people. More people keep showing up. No one's helping her. It's only getting worse. Oh my God. This is the definition of torture.
A shower curtain rod was used to beat Missy at this time. Missy was handcuffed and blindfolded with a scarf. Other reports say it was a towel. Covering her with a coat, the men forced her into the car where she was made to lay down in the back floorboard. Driving out of town, when they were on U.S. Highway 78, Missy managed to somehow get out of the handcuffs. She began screaming and struggling. The men discussed strangling her, which caused Missy to scream even more. Joseph Gardner, sitting in the front passenger seat, reached over the seat, grabbed Missy by the hair, and shot her twice in the face.
Jesus.
The .25 caliber pistol had belonged to Danny Dwayne McCall, one of the men who also assaulted Missy. One investigator noted that oftentimes a towel will be swathed around a victim's head when they're going to be shot so that the blood splatter doesn't mess up the car. And the detective wondered if Missy knew that, because that has to be an equally terrifying experience. Just the whole situation.
No, I mean, I can't imagine.
14 miles outside of Charleston, Gardner shot Missy 3 more times in the face and once in the arm. The men then dumped Missy on the side of the road. Afterwards, they drove back to Charleston, where they went night clubbing for the remainder of the evening.
See, it didn't even slow these guys down. They're monsters.
A motorist found Missy, who was miraculously still alive. However, she died before the ambulance could arrive. In total, Missy was held captive for about 2.5 hours before being killed. The following day, Matthew Mack told his next-door neighbor, quote, "We killed a white bitch last night. We've been planning to do this for a while." It took authorities 4 days to identify Melissa. The next day, law enforcement officials located the trailer where Missy had been raped. Immediately, law enforcement suspected a racial motive. Inside the trailer, a 4-page document was found with racial epithets about white oppression, crudely written racial diatribe, and also claiming that African Americans were justified in seeking revenge by means of murder.
I disagree. I mean, yeah. These are just people who are rationalizing wanting to be pieces of shit. And
monsters. I couldn't exactly pinpoint how the police located the trailer, but I did find a news report that mentioned an anonymous tip. And these guys were out bragging to people, so
yeah, I can't imagine everyone
surprised.
in their orbit is okay with this, right? There's some decent people that they know of or live near. So, yeah, somebody's going to spill the beans when you're going around talking crazy like this.
Racial tensions were always bubbling under the surface in Charleston, South Carolina. As the largest slave port in colonial America, Charleston is a city dominated by a black population, but ruled with an iron fist by the white minority for decades. By 1800, Charleston had a black population of around 11,000, with the white population somewhere around maybe 8,800. The first shot fired in the war between states was in South Carolina, and it was also the first state to secede from the Union. So South Carolina and Charleston in particular were ardent defenders of the institution of slavery. As we all know, centuries of oppression do not disappear quickly, sometimes not at all, especially when some use the issue for personal or political gain. North Charleston Police Captain Charles Caldwell explained, quote, "I think we have to be responsible to the community and the people we protect. I didn't want to believe this was a racial crime, and we tried to look for other motivations." State Senator Robert Ford, he claimed that Missy's murder was not racially motivated, but rather police, quote, "should be investigated for inventing a racist plot."
Okay.
Ford went on to say if Missy had been a black woman, the police would have not worked as hard to solve the murder. Ford derided, quote, "decent white people for remaining silent against white racism."
There's a lot in that statement. I agree with him. If it had been a black victim, they probably wouldn't have come in guns a-blazing. I mean, honestly, we see that all the time, even in the modern day. So that's possibly has some truth to it. But
but I also feel like
Representative Ford a black man?
Yes, but I also feel like you're victim blaming this woman
Yes.
because of her race and saying it's not a racial issue, but then turning it into a racial issue. Does that make sense?
No,
I mean, I
makes
kind of
total
feel like
sense.
this guy's doing some pretty extreme mental gymnastics to arrive at this conclusion. You can point out the disparity among the way cases are investigated.
Okay, but so let's say it's 3 white dudes and a black chick, and they do these horrible things to her that's been done to Missy. And when the cops come there, they find some KKK literature.
Right.
And the guys have been told by witnesses going around saying, we killed a black bitch last night. We went and found one. We did it. We've been wanting to. We've been planning it. You think they would leave race out of that situation?
Well, we know they wouldn't.
We know they wouldn't, okay? And they should.
So, again, that's why this is such a hot-button case.
I get, yeah.
Because for some reason, it seems like everyone is afraid to say, yes, this is an issue of race, that there's prejudice and discrimination that has sort of catapulted this to happen.
Well,
right?
and
or that has created this scenario.
yeah, and what me and you also discussed is this is on top of rape, torture, and murder, okay? So it almost gets diluted when you bring the racial issue in. Is it racial, not racial? I think those are important conversations, but does it really fucking matter? These people hunted this woman. They got her. They brutalized her and did all this terrible shit to her. 4, 5, 6 guys or whatever inside of 2 or 3 hours. So, I mean, if you take the race out of the conversation, this is monstrous. It's terrible. So, I mean...
No, you're absolutely right, Dylan. And we're going to discuss this more as our case goes on. Police Chief Reuben Greenberg, who is also an African-American, discussed the issue in Charleston, and he said, quote, "There's no tension at all except that people are amazed that anything like this occurred. They're shocked that something like this happened. It just shows all along that we have our own racists as well." Melissa's father, Claire McLauchlin, told the media that racial motivation didn't overshadow the fact of his daughter's death. He said, quote, "The nature of the crime is enough. A hate crime doesn't make any difference," he explained, as it was just a reason to justify the murder. He added, quote, "All of us are guilty. There's been prejudice in this world for a long, long time." Which I think is exactly what you're saying, Dylan.
No,
because
that's
he's
very
like,
eloquent.
He says it doesn't matter.
They're trying to
This
use
is
that.
horrible.
Yes.
This happened to my daughter. It's terrible. She's dead. So
Right.
there's no excuse for what happened.
I agree completely. That's well put.
In the weeks following Melissa's murder, letters poured into Charleston's Post and Courier. Many complained about what they felt was a double standard, that if the races had been reversed, Melissa's story would have made national news, complete with protests, candlelight vigils, and civil rights marches. At the time of Melissa's murder, 31-year-old Christopher Wilson, a black man from New York who was visiting Tampa, was abducted from a shopping area at gunpoint. Wilson was driven. I need new glasses. Wilson was driven to an isolated area, robbed and doused with gasoline, then set on fire. He was burned over 40% of his body, Dylan.
That's disgusting.
3 white men were charged with attempted murder. In each case, there was evidence that race was at least part of the motive. In Tampa, investigators found a note suggesting the murder was done by the KKK. And of course, that organization, I guess, if you want to call it that.
That club.
Denied any involvement. Wilson told police the suspects had taunted him with racial slurs.
And all 3 of those guys should be doused in gas and set on fucking fire.
Right.
You see, I mean, it doesn't... Just monsters are monsters, man. God, jeez, I don't care what color they are.
Right, but these 2 cases have been kind of compared to each other.
Oh, no, I
because
understand.
Wilson's case made national news.
Right.
A lot of political leaders were speaking out about it. Was horrific, but they were not getting the same coverage of Melissa's case.
That's very unfortunate.
But, Dylan, I will say, the reactions from both black and white community members in Florida and South Carolina was revulsion. One of the leads that had cracked the Melissa McLauchlin case open was from a black female.
Okay.
So this anonymous caller who gave a tip had been a black female.
And that doesn't surprise me one bit, because anytime this kind of crap happens, no matter what the races are or how it plays out, most most people aren't racist. Okay, I mean, I'm just gonna say it. Most people they'll have you believe everybody's racist nowadays, but it's just not true. And people are horrified by these types of crimes. It doesn't matter if they're black, white, brown, yellow, red, whatever. And most people are decent people, and they would never ever do anything like this
Unless they're reptilians.
Unless they're reptilians, and even the reptiles have their limits.
Yeah.
You know, they may hiss. Call and drop an anonymous hiss on you.
Hillary Clinton might eat a few babies, but
she doesn't care what color those babies are,
no,
guys.
she doesn't.
She eats all the babies.
She does.
That's just a joke. That was a good.
Is it?
Stop! You're gonna get us on like it's on the list or something.
On the Clinton their next hit list.
I will not accept any invitations from the Clinton Foundation. I'll just put that out there now.
I ain't scared of them.
That's right. You take me to the island, you son of a bitch. I'm gonna free everybody.
You let Bill Clinton try to sexually harass me.
My wife will sexually harass Bill Clinton.
I'll stick that cigar up his ass. Okay, so Pam Baldwin, a black resident of Charleston, told the media, quote, that the gang rape killing was sick and asked, how could somebody go around with such an attitude? Research has shown that bias, motivated assaults are more brutal. Their victims are 3 times as likely to require hospitalization.
Wow.
Violence isn't a byproduct, it's the goal in these hate crime cases. A criminologist at Northeastern University in Boston named Jack McDevitt, who helped the FBI train police in handling hate crimes, said when victims are chosen at random because of their race, quote, the message to everyone in that group is, you don't belong. Adding that hate crimes are most often committed by people who feel their turf, neighborhood, school, workplace is being invaded, or because of a sense of losing social or economic status, that people look for somebody to blame for their problems. Enid Plummer, who was Christopher Wilson's mother, wanted a photograph of her son's burn injuries to circulate and told the LA Times, quote, I want everyone to see what people are capable of doing over skin color. I want people to see how ugly racism is.
I agree.
Mike Kelly, a neighbor of Matthew Mack, their roommate Craig Rice, and Matthew Williams, lived a few trailers down from the scene of the rape and knew most of the suspects as neighbors. He said most everyone in the trailer park shook their heads in disgust, asking, I'd like to know what they were thinking. So again, I think the majority of people are just completely disgusted by this and horrified.
Yeah, very few people will be like, wow, that's great. Awesome. Good job, guys.
Neighbor Frank Benar was also shocked. He said, quote, we've come a long way. White and blacks get along. He also said the accused threw parties with loud music. There would be up to 40 people in attendance with many white guests. He had a hard time accepting that the murder was racially motivated. Yet others, like an 18-year-old named Jenny, who chose not to use her last name, said she avoided the men because they frightened her. She was a resident of the trailer park.
See, and that I don't think that's racial. That's not racially motivated. That is a woman feeling a vibe from monsters who happen to be men, and they're creeped out. And I'm sure many women felt that way around these guys.
This woman told investigators that she had only lived in the trailer park for a few months with her husband, who was in the Navy, and their baby. Jenny had witnessed the 3 men kicking a woman in a car at one point. So she was immediately freaked out. And that was one of the reasons why she's like, I just stayed away from them. And that the trailer park manager had warned her to, quote, stay away from them.
Okay.
Because they were bad news.
Maybe you should make them move out, bud.
It is said that the 3 men were about to be evicted from the trailer for non-payment of rent. Rice, Mack, and Gardner had all been stationed on a guided missile destroyer together before Matthew Mack was discharged. So again, they have ties to the military. One is active duty. Well, 2 are active duty, and this 3rd one had been active duty.
You said that made you feel scared to know that these types of monsters are active or enlisted men and would be, working side by side by, someone like you when you're in the Navy.
No, it's scary. I mean, you have a diverse group of people coming together for a mission, right? But a lot of those people are not good people. You always kind of think of people who go into like law enforcement or nursing or fire, emergency services, that there are people who have a good heart and like want to help and want to do something for like the greater good. And I think you also apply that to the military.
Yeah.
You know, you have these ideas of people who are patriotic and they want to serve their country and they want to protect and fight for our nation's rights, you know, and defend the Constitution. But you're also not thinking that the people who are in those positions could also be dangerous. They could be predators. They could be rapists. They could be murderers, right?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, it's scary.
Well, no, it certainly comes with some prestige when I think about, you know, someone joining the military, that you have to adhere to a certain moral code or something or you wouldn't join. But
so even if what we're discussing is broadly true, that most people, regardless of race or ethnicity, are completely horrified when they hear something like this, the racial aspect of this crime against Missy became a pretty hot button issue, Dylan. A few days after Melissa's murder, John Owen, her fiance, was taken to the crime scene. Sitting in a reporter's car, he smoked a cigarette and said, quote, "A monster is a monster. Doesn't matter what color. White people do the same." Owen was more frustrated with himself for not following her out of the bar. He said, quote, "We always make up. We never went to sleep mad. In the end, I always told her I love you."
I'm sure he feels some guilt for not going after his lady like that, making sure she's okay. But yeah, well, and that's another thing is when the racial conversation starts, it changes the conversation from away from murder, rape, torture. I mean, it really does, because everybody attaches their own ideals and stuff to the racial conversation, and it very quickly the victims get on both. Everyone gets pushed to the side. It becomes about something else, in my opinion. It gets politicized. It gets used by various groups for, you know, clout and things like that. People use it to raise money. I mean, there's all these motivations tied to that conversation.
It's true, Dylan, and it was another reason why I chose this case, because I do think it brings up a lot of feelings for people, and it's a good discussion to have, right?
It is. It's a valid
I mean, I think it will
discussion.
I think this case will leave people thinking, like after we wrap it up in the days to follow. Law enforcement, during the course of their investigation, learned that Matthew Williams and his girlfriend, Indira Simmons, had fled the area. Eventually, they will be discovered in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Joseph Gardner, who was a second-class petty officer in the Navy stationed at the Charleston Naval Base, had taken leave to visit his mother in Detroit. His mother worked for the Wayne County Sheriff's Office.
Wow.
Matthew Mack joined Gardner in Detroit in the days following Missy's murder. Police descended on Gardner's mother's house on January 4th of 1993. Matthew Mack was taken into custody, but Joseph Gardner was not apprehended. At the time, law enforcement found a blood-stained shirt belonging to Joseph Gardner. It was the shirt they believed he was wearing at the time of the murder, hidden in his mother's house. And by the way, his mother was not at all helpful in working with law enforcement to find her son.
Really?
Yeah, which I thought was interesting considering she worked for the sheriff's office.
Well, yeah, you would think she's the first person to be like, look, you got to turn yourself in, deal with this. You know, it'll all work itself out in court or whatever.
I know. Joseph Gardner, Dylan, was on the run for 21 months. The FBI added him to their top 10 most wanted list. He was eventually located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Someone recognized his photo hanging in the post office and turned him in.
Damn.
And at the time, Gardner had been working under an assumed name, Tony, at like a convenience/corner grocery store. And when he was arrested, I found a news article where people in the neighborhood were surprised. Like, a lot of kids would go to that store and play video. I guess they had a couple arcade games, and talked about how if kids didn't have money, he would give them quarters and he would play like games with the kids. And they thought he was like a really cool kind of older big brother type.
Yeah.
And had absolutely no idea that he was a monster.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So when he's arrested, Dylan, Gardner told the media that Mack and the others blamed him. He fled after hearing news reports that suggested he was the trigger man. Quote, "Put yourself in my place. If you didn't do it, would you stay?" He also said he was a scapegoat since he was the last suspect captured. Quote, Everybody that came here and testified got a deal, some kind of deal. On the 4th of January, 1993, when the police came to my mother's house in Detroit, I wish I got caught so I could have got a deal.
Okay.
Okay, well, but you ran, sir.
But you did, yeah. You could have very easily got caught by turning yourself in at any time.
Danny Dwayne McCall was also arrested. 25-year-old McCall was charged with accessory before the fact of murder, conspiracy to kidnap, conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit sexual assault. McCall had the murder weapon in his possession and had been initially told to kill McLauchlin. They were trying to get him to do it. McCall, who'd participated in Missy's sexual assault, pled guilty to failing to report a crime and third-degree criminal sexual conduct. He was given 6 years in prison.
No. Third-degree sexual conduct. That's fucking rape, dude. You raped that poor woman.
Oh, you know these DAs are
And you had a
willing to-
gun. Huh? You had the gun, right?
Yep.
You could have come in there with your gun and made them guys get off of her, right? Fuck you, dude. Ah, shit. I'm starting to get hot, bud.
I knew you would.
I don't need this story, but it's a good time because it's cold in this room.
A trailer park neighbor named Roger Williams was charged with concealing a felony by another and third-degree criminal sexual conduct in exchange for his testimony. Roger Williams had participated in the rape of Missy McLauchlin, but didn't stick around the mobile home after that. He testified that Joseph Gardner grew angry at Missy when she started to fight his attempts to sodomize her, right? And that's when he left. He didn't learn of Missy's fate until the following day when Matthew Mack informed him that Joseph Gardner had killed the woman and Mack was going to be leaving town. 23-year-old Roger Williams also testified that after learning about the murder, he allowed Mack, Williams, and Gardner to use his washing machine to get rid of evidence. And he also loaned them a garden hose, which they used to clean the car. Another man, Craig Rice, who happened to be living at that residence, he was arrested. They charged him with basically failure to report a crime because he had heard of what had happened but didn't report it, although he did not participate in any way. Eventually, I guess they dropped the charges against him because he didn't get any, he was never sentenced.
Right.
So again, you have these people who know but don't go tell. See, I think we hear this a lot, that this attitude that's like, oh, you're a snitch if you tell.
Right.
People who don't want to report, they don't want to look like a rat or a traitor. That's a really bad attitude to have. I think that's the wrong mentality to have.
Look, I'm all for letting people live their lives. You know what I'm saying? As long as you don't violently attack or assault, just do your thing. Sometimes you might get loud or whatever. You know, I'm not going to be all in your business, but something like this is big.
This is a big deal.
This is a big deal, and I don't care who it was. I don't care if it's my family member, my brother, my whatever. I could not sit on this.
Same.
My conscience wouldn't allow me to not say something on this.
Well, you just have to have a moral compass. You have to know right from wrong, and you I don't know, have to be a person, I think, that's willing to stand up for what's right, even if it's not popular, even if people are going to call you a rat or a snitch or whatever. I don't care. I'm going to go tell someone when something like this happens.
Well, yeah, you have to. That's someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's mom.
This is a human being.
It's a human being.
It's just this just shouldn't happen. It's not okay. Indira Simmons, who lived at the mobile home with her boyfriend Matthew Williams, was in the living room watching television while the gang raped Missy McLauchlin. She told investigators and later testified that her boyfriend told her the men had picked up a prostitute and were going to be taking her into the other room. Simmons testified that Missy had consented to sex in exchange for crack cocaine. She said at some point later in the evening, after Missy had been assaulted, Mac grabbed a large kitchen knife and said he was going to, quote, kill the bitch. Simmons thought he was joking. Simmons said she prayed for the woman, but didn't take Mac seriously.
Okay.
It's nice, I guess, that she prayed for her. Simmons was sentenced to 7 years in prison for concealing a felony, but was given credit for time served. She was also ordered to undergo some counseling and was on an intense probation for about a year after her release. And I think she had to do like 500 hours of community service.
She deserved to go to jail.
Edna Lee Jenkins, who was Joseph Gardner's girlfriend, testified she had seen the men bringing a white woman out from the bedroom. Missy had a scarf tied around her face and that her hands were behind her back as the men led her to the car outside. Jenkins also admitted she had given her boyfriend Gardner a gun after the murder, helped him escape to Detroit, and had removed and cleaned up items from the crime scene at the mobile home. She also testified that Missy had wanted crack cocaine.
See, I'm no prostitute expert, but they typically don't need to be bound with their face covered going in and out of homes or rooms. Okay? So even if you're dumb enough to believe that shit in the first place.
These women knew what was going on.
At what point? I know they did.
I just can't imagine being so
callous.
Desperate to like be a pick me or something that you're going to go along with your boyfriend raping some woman just so you can have a man in your life. I mean, that's what this seems like to me. It's like disgusting and gross and desperate. And it also shows me that you're kind of a piece of shit.
Yep. That's right.
And that maybe you have your own issues of maybe being racist or misogynist or something.
Something.
That you don't care about other women.
Or I just don't know how you do it.
It's just gross.
You sit in the other room while they loudly beat
It's
and
just
rape.
terrible. Despite the witness testimony that Missy McLauchlin had agreed to sex in exchange for crack cocaine, her toxicology report showed a 0.025% blood alcohol content and no drugs in her system. Missy's boyfriend, John Owen, did not believe that Missy consented to sex for drugs. He said Missy had not used drugs in several years. He also felt immense guilt for not following her when she left the bar. Owen stated that he truly loved Missy, and he just couldn't believe that she got into this car willingly with these three strangers.
No, I agree. I don't think she did either.
Among the suspects, 5 were former or current Navy sailors, including Craig Rice and Joseph Gardner. 2 of the suspects had been dishonorably discharged for their involvement with drugs while on active duty. Commander Max Allen of the Charleston Naval Base spoke with the press after the arrests, stating that none of the service members had any involvement with racial incidents while in the military. But Dylan, we can talk about this later. I did find a blog that was discussing this case, and there were quite a few comments from people who said they served alongside these guys and that there were incidents.
So they've been known to say racially charged language at the very least.
Yes, one guy claimed that Joseph Gardner had pulled a knife on another sailor and had made some statements about the guy's race, and then it just sort of got brushed under the rug, which happens.
Right.
So I believe that could possibly happen. And that he was kind of a bit of a walking time bomb. That they were horrified when they heard this happen, but they also were maybe not that surprised because he was somebody who seemed to have a temper.
Okay.
Yeah. Matthew Mack testified that he had no idea Joseph Gardner planned to kill Missy McLauchlin. He believed when the group put her into the car, they had planned to just drop her off at home or someplace else. Now, this is the same guy who picked up the knife and said he should kill the bitch.
See, they're trying to distance themselves from the murder.
Yes.
That's obvious. And in my book, you're already done. You brutally gang raped this woman, so you're already going to die for that. So you can go ahead and disassociate yourself from the murder and the scene and all that shit if you want, but you're all still going to die. So let's go ahead and get it going.
Matthew Williams and Matthew Mack were given life sentences for their role in Missy's sexual assault and murder. They will be eligible for parole after 30 years. Joseph Gardner was last to go to trial. He was found guilty. Gardner begged for his life, stating, quote, "I don't want to die. What happened shouldn't have happened, but I don't want my kids to grow up without me."
Oh, well.
Womp womp.
Don't rape and murder people.
Gardner, along with several jurors, wept as Mr. and Mrs. McLauchlin talked to the court about their loss. During testimony, Gardner described growing up with his mother in Detroit, who beat him with extension cords, burned him with curling irons, and that she had knocked out his teeth. A psychiatrist testified that Gardner didn't suffer any mental disorders, but that he did have poor impulse control without thinking of consequences. At 14, Gardner had been committed to a mental hospital by his mother because she couldn't control his behavior. A witness testified that about 10 months before McLauchlin's murder, Joseph Gardner had brought a white woman to a friend's house. She had a bag over her head. Gardner forced the woman to perform oral sex on the friend.
This is a separate incident.
Yeah.
Wow.
Former shipmate Frederick McCauley said the woman had refused to comply and that Gardner had slapped the woman until she agreed to give the friend oral sex. So that sounds to me like he's kidnapped and assaulted another woman.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
If that's true, that's exactly what happened.
Gardner was not charged in the February 1992 incident with this other woman. Gardner was given the death penalty. 38-year-old Joseph Gardner died by lethal injection on December 5th of 2008 at the Broad River Correctional Institute. He apologized to the McLauchlin family via a letter from his attorney. He opted to forego a last meal, spending his final day with attorney Keir Wable. He didn't offer up any last words, but was overheard saying, "I'm going to pray now." Gardner became the 40th inmate to be put to death in South Carolina since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. The execution didn't draw any protesters. Only 4 people paced outside, with one, a carpenter from Charleston, stating, "I don't believe the state has any business murdering people." Claire and Patricia McLauchlin, who moved to Live Oak, Florida, chose not to attend the execution. Claire told the media, quote, "It is over for him, but not for us. It will never be over for us." He previously told the press he could have sympathy for Gardner and his mother because they were both human, but would never forgive the man for what he had done to Melissa. Quote, "What he did in 1992 was a life sentence for us that is never going to go away. It's always there, and it will always be there. He's getting off free in a way. He's not going to have to think about it anymore, but not a day goes by that we don't think about it."
Wow.
Melissa was buried next to her grandmother at the First Baptist Church Cemetery in Ionia, Michigan. The plot also contains Melissa's infant brother Christopher, who died of Ray's syndrome. Patricia said, quote, "All she ever talked about was being buried with her grandmother and little brother. I'd like to think I'm making her happy doing something."
Wow. I don't even know what to say. So sad and so senseless.
It is really sad, Dylan. And the thing is, like, this affected the community in so many ways. It, from some of the comments that I was reading, people who were on this ship, which was, I believe, a guided missile destroyer with Joseph Gardner. It was the USS R.K. Turner, CG-20. That afterwards, people in the community looked at sailors all with suspicion and sort of treated them badly, like they were all monsters and they were all capable of doing this kind of crime. So not only did you have these racial issues, but you also it caused a bit of a trouble between the civilians and the military personnel that were stationed in this area.
Wow, I didn't even contemplate that, but I could see that happening, honestly.
Yeah. It's a really sad story.
It's really sad. It is really sad, and the story deserves to be discussed and talked about, like you said. And I just hate it when people take something like this and twist it and use it for personal benefit or gain of some sort, because it's terrible. It's a monstrous thing that happened to this lady.
Well, and I think what you said was right, Dylan. I think, we can look at these hate crimes and say, yes, this is definitely a hate crime. This shouldn't have happened. And we can discuss the reasons for these divisions among our communities and whatever. But I do think you're right that at the end of the day, a murder is a murder is a murder.
Well, yeah.
And having an excuse for it doesn't really discount what happened.
No,
it doesn't make it better or worse.
No,
it's still horrible.
No, you're exactly right, because you either answering yes or no on the hate, is it not a hate crime, doesn't change what happened to the victim.
I mean, it can maybe offer up motive.
But yeah.
But other than that, I mean, it's just horrific. It doesn't matter who did it or whatever. I mean, the fact is, this poor young woman, 25 years old, just starting her life, getting ready to be married, buy a home. I mean, who knows where she could be today? Is just snuffed out in such a cruel and brutal way.
No, and that
after the last hours of her life are torturous.
And that family member said it right. This is a life sentence. The family got a life sentence too, and nothing's ever going to change that.
Can you imagine as a parent? I can't. Knowing that
No.
this is how your child spent their last hours and that someone did this to your baby.
No, I can't.
I just feel like as a parent, and I think Claire and Patricia McLauchlin have never gotten over it or recovered from it. There is no closure. It's a pain they deal with every day.
There's a hole.
And it doesn't get better.
And I can't even begin to try to understand what kind of pain or what kind of anguish that entails. I can't. It's terrible.
I know, and then it just really makes me want to look at these men and be like, what was crossing your mind? Like, what made you think this was okay to do? Why? Like, why did you do this? I mean, I think so many of us get into true crime. We want to understand the psychology, the motivation, like the why,
Right.
the whys and hows. And this is one of those cases for me that it's like, I just need to know why. Like, what made you do this?
How can you do this? How can you
Yes.
help someone do this? How can you cover it up or not tell on someone who does this? They better not try to bullshit around me, bud.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
It's not happening.
You know, when you have an individual murderer, it's terrible. But just having this group that's so willing to go along with anything.
I mean, I guess, Pete, you're
That group think, that group mentality, that herd mentality is very scary.
Yeah, but this one's almost, as far as that point goes, is interesting in the fact of it's like there's other 2 or 3 more guys they called over after they had her there
Yes.
already. They weren't there. They weren't being intimidated into doing something. They willingly came over. And I guess it just boils down to you being friendly with people who are kind of like-minded. But how do you even find 5 or 6 guys that don't mind raping, torturing a woman? I mean,
Again, that's
I
the
don't
thing
get
that
it.
I
don't get that part.
I can't understand is how not a single person spoke up or spoke out.
No. All right.
Cowardly.
Gosh, a little bit drained after that one, but that's a tough story. It needed to be talked about. I agree with that.
All right. Don't forget to check out the Darkcast Network, where you can find all sorts of awesome, wicked, cool true crime shows, paranormal.
You can find you all kinds of indie pod suggestions.
It's true.
And they got some great ones.
So check out the Darkcast Network. You can follow them on Instagram at Darkcast Network. They're going to give you some great suggestions every week of what you should be listening to.
Yes, and thanks again for Jennifer and Maria's support over there at the Patreons.
true.
I'm sorry, that was a bit of a tough episode, but we sure do appreciate your support and everyone else who's over there supporting us on that Patreon. I was looking the other day, there's like over 800 items on Patreon. Okay? And you're going to get everything, including the midweek, the regular week, all that, ad-free, everything, and improve your listening. What's the word? Improving
Experience.
Yes, your listening
Just an overall
experience.
experience. You
And
won't
Heather-
have those ads.
And a lot of times Heather will beef up the story that you heard in the regular week or midweek or the regular episode, and she'll beef it up with photos and other stories and things that support that episode. And so it's a lot of fun. Full-on episodes. We got the Haunted Castle series now we're doing. I can't wait to do another one of those. I bet we might get one in today.
We're going to be getting one in here very soon, Dylan. And also another case that we're going to be covering on Patreon. I discussed with some of our patrons, and they're down for it. We're going to go back and look at the murder of Lacey Peterson.
We're going to take a hard look at it, folks.
We're going to do a deep dive. And one of the reasons why, because of course it's recently been announced that the LA Innocence Project is taking on Scott Peterson's case. They claim they have some new evidence that surfaced. It made me wonder, because there are some folks out there who are like ardent supporters of Peterson and think he's not guilty. And I was trying to remember back to the evidence. I watched this trial on Court TV. This is a case that I was very invested in at the time.
Yeah.
But of course, that's been years ago. So I'd like to go back and revisit that. And I think some other people might be interested as well. It'll be, I guess, coming out soon. What the Innocence Project, maybe what direction they're going with, what evidence they may have. So I thought a revisit of that case, a good refresher for us all. And the patrons seemed excited about that. So we will be doing a little deep dive on the murder of Lacey Peterson on Patreon, which is a departure from our East Coast true crime.
Yes, and you know, that I remember that being a huge case. It was one of the first 5, in my opinion, a very sensationalized case that the whole nation's talking about. And but I don't remember the nuts and bolts of evidence or circumstance of how everything played out. So
I have to say, I'm reading a book. I just started a book, so you know I'm starting my research, and the book is so funny in that the author is very subjective and has a lot of opinions.
Now, we're not saying that he's innocent, okay?
Oh,
just
no,
to make sure.
No, the truth is I've always thought he was guilty, but I do kind of want to go back now that I do have more experience in studying true crime and just evidence and what's there.
Well, you can take something and say, I think he's guilty, but, and I'm not saying I'm saying this, but you look at all the evidence and say, if I was on the jury by the letter of the law and instruction of the judge, I would not be able to convict on this evidence. And you can say those two things.
Well, you can, but then people are going to be mad at you because when I said I didn't think there was enough there to convict Danny Masterson, people went off on me.
Yeah, but we weren't supporting Danny
Masterson. I wasn't saying he was innocent or guilty.
No.
I was just saying if I was on that jury, I would have a hard time.
By the letter of the law.
Based on this evidence.
And as true crime aficionados that we are and the listeners are, it's okay to have that conversation. It doesn't make you a victim blamer or any of that.
Well, not according to people who emailed me hate mail. But I do want to talk about Scott Peterson. But this book is funny because the author, it's so contradictory. It's like one chapter, she's blaming him. Like they had financial problems and it was all his fault because of A, B, C, D. But then in the next chapter is like, Lacey had a Range Rover and decided that she was going to stop working and wanted to live this kind of high society lifestyle. But it's all his fault. And I'm just like, do you not know how to write a book objectively? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
no,
funny.
You read me some
excerpts. It was such an
excerpts.
opinion piece. And I'm like, okay, maybe I need a different book to read because
it was certainly biased from the first word, which is fine.
This one is definitely not objective at all.
All right. So I'm going to take Heather
to thaw out.
Take her downstairs and put her in the oven to thaw out.
Thanks. Like a big fat turkey.
We hope everyone's safe out there when this podcast finds you, and we do appreciate every single person that listens.
Keep it weird. Fake your own death.
That's like, keep it weird and fake your own death.
Sure. Why not?
That's right.
Eat a corn dog.
All right. That's all I got. Bye.